What's at issue here is the tremendous power that the government has and restraining that power from being abused.
A news report shows that Americans have the lowest ranking on access to justice compared to 11 other developed countries across the world.
From absence of corruption to limited government power to an effective criminal system, the United States ranked 7th or below out of 11 countries in all areas except for one.
The hallmark of our system is our judicial system and the fact that you get a fair trial.
Those to whom we grant power, we demand accountability. And in order to hold them accountable, there must be transparency.
Should your fate come down to the spin of the wheel, is really the question, or the location of the prosecution?
It's fairness, right? That's what our justice system is supposed to be about. Fairness, ultimately, whatever the outcome is.
This is not a system of vengeance, it's a system of justice. But it needs to behave more like that.
Our judicial system ought to be the gold standard. It ought to be something that people have public confidence in.
All started May 12th, when hundreds of federal immigration authorities raided agri-processors and arrested 389 workers. Agri-processors, a kosher meat processing plant and the town's largest employer, was raided by Homeland Security. Once home to 3,000 people, Postville's population has dwindled in a matter of months to just 1,800. The company was forced to suspend operations last week.
The federal raid came in and mowed us down and basically upended our town, turned it upside down.
A terrorist bomb could have not done more damage to this town than what our own government caused.
And with the raid, a lot of good people got hurt. We all come to work every day to make a living for our family. That's why they were there.
Cesar Ochoa runs a market and restaurant. Before the raid, 200 people a day came in. Today, a handful.
Shalom Rubashkin is not guilty. A Blackhawk County jury returned that verdict today on dozens of charges of child labor violations.
All of the hoopla, all of the big raid, all of the charges, and no conviction. They proceed down this tangent of an alleged fraud.
The plant's CEO, Shalom Rubashkin, was charged with bank fraud.
The word fraud is almost limitless. Fraud means anything that a federal prosecutor or a federal judge says it is.
At its core, what Shalom Rubashkin was convicted of was borrowing more money than his father's company was technically allowed to borrow.
As a former prosecutor, I, of course, always wanted to make my case, and as a young prosecutor, not really knowing any better, I always thought of doing a lot of creative things.
Federal prosecutors have available to them an armament of vague statutes such that they can prosecute absolutely anybody.
They have enormous power and influence over what happens to defendants, not just in terms of whether they're convicted of crimes or not, but also in terms of their ultimate punishment.
Decisions by prosecutors about what charges to bring, or how many to bring, or how many they're going to drop if a defendant pleads guilty, that's not done on the record.
Prosecutors, particularly federal prosecutors, have a special ethical duty that applies only to them. It's not to win the case. It's to see that justice is done.
Rubashkin was found guilty of 86 charges of financial fraud earlier this month. He has been in jail ever since, facing possible sentencing of 1,200 years.
They initially were recommending a life sentence for Rubashkin. You really have to take a step back and there's something behind the life sentence recommendation.
This is heavy-handedness of the federal government because they have the money and the power and because they want to. And in this case, because they could.
Why are they doing this? I mean, what's the need to do it? Other than, to me, the questionable tactic of trying to convey to a jury, like, this is really bad and this guy's a really bad criminal, look how many times he violated the law.
The decision to pile on those additional money laundering charges when they're both referring to the same sort of fraudulent conduct is a good example of the ability that prosecutors have to just pile on.
They bankrupted the business by raiding them and then by prosecuting them as if this was John Dillinger, who was, public enemy number one.
Where's the supervision? Where's the discretion? How is the collective experience of those supervisors being brought to bear in this particular case?
The chief prosecutor, the U.S. attorney, does supervise the assistant U.S. attorneys. But who's supervising the U.S. attorney?
Studies have shown prosecutors are hardly ever criminally charged or disciplined for serious error or misconduct. The Supreme Court has ruled that prosecutors have absolute immunity from civil lawsuits for their legal work.
It was unprecedented for 6 former Attorney Generals of the United States to go on the record in a case about a position that was being taken by a party, and a strong letter that communicated, we think the Justice Department is way off base here.
While this may appear to be the end of the case, it is not. It is indeed the beginning of the case. It's round one, if you will.
We will fight this till he gets his fair shake at justice, and we will do it till the end, as long as it takes. Thank you.
He's at 51 years of age, and he's doing, in essence, a life prison sentence in the federal penitentiary. We probably need that space for somebody that's just really an outlaw.
This case is a good example of how the sentencing guidelines can produce unjust results in their quest for justice.
In a way, there's an oddity here, which is that's what the sentencing guidelines were designed to do. They were designed to avoid a world where your sentence was going to be dictated largely by which courtroom you walked into and which judge you had.
It shouldn't make a difference whether you're a defendant in New York or a defendant in Iowa. You should get the same thing.
It wasn't just Mr. Rubashkin. There's lots of people in that situation, and it's because of the guidelines and because of this tendency on the part of the department to overcharge.
What's different about this case? Why, if in most of these cases the judges are saying the guidelines range is too high, and because this is the first-time offender, because they're unlikely to recidivate, for whatever other reasons, we're going to depart downward. Why aren't you doing that in this case?
I want to also just touch on a letter that I sent you about Shalom Rubashkin. It appears both the sentence is incredibly excessive and the judge who levied the sentence engaged in inappropriate ex parte communication.
It is breathtaking to have a judge spend weeks working with the prosecutors, working with the agents, in order to set up a massive bust, and to then have the judge sit on the trial.
That involvement and the failure to disclose that involvement deprived Shalom Rubashkin of due process.
The appearance of impropriety hurts our system because if people look and believe that the system is not working fairly, they then don't have any respect for the laws.
This case demonstrates that tremendous power, if used in a certain manner, can result in a completely unjust result.
If you're in Mr. Rubashkin's shoes, you want to know that the judge who's going to be presiding over your case met for over a period of time of 7 months, going over every little jot and tittle and aspect of the raid of your plant and the arrest of your workers, on charges that ultimately became part of your indictment. Shalom Rubashkin had a right to know that.